My name is Veronica Moore. I'm 28 years old, and if you had asked me 5 years ago what the word family meant, I would have told you it was everything. The foundation beneath my feet, the safety net waiting to catch me, the people whose hands would never ever let go no matter how rough the storm got. But today, when I hear someone casually say, "We're family," I feel a dull, familiar ache in my chest, and the echo of a door slamming shut in my face, my own mother's door. I learned the hard way that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally will throw you to the wolves the very second it benefits them, and all it took was one lie. One ridiculous, easily disproven lie from my younger sister Melanie. A lie that shattered my entire life in a single morning. It turned me into an outcast, the disappointment, the villain, in a story I didn't even know was being written about me. Growing up, I thought my family was close. Not perfect, no family is, but close enough that I believed we'd always have each other's backs. I grew up in a modest, slightly cluttered home on the outskirts of a small city. The kind of neighborhood where people still waved at each other, where dogs barked at passing cars, and where kids rode bikes until the streetlights blinked on. My parents were the type to brag about how hard they worked for everything we had. And to be fair, they did work hard. My dad was a contractor who always smelled faintly of sawdust and engine oil. He'd leave before sunrise and come home with his shoulders slumped, his hair sprinkled with wood shavings. My mom worked part-time at a local clinic and handled, well, everything else. Bills, laundry, homework, meals. Her love language was doing fixing, organizing, holding the whole world together with her two hands. I was their eldest child born when my mom was only 21, which meant I grew up watching her grow up. We survived each other in a way, learning and stumbling, and trying our best in a house that wasn't always calm but was always full. Then there was Melanie, 2 years younger, eternally treated like the baby of the family even when she hit adulthood. If you met Melanie once, you'd probably describe her as sweet, gentle, charming. She had this soft, angelic voice and big hazel eyes that could blink away guilt like it was nothing. That was her gift, her superpower. Behind that soft smile was someone who could manipulate a whole room without raising her voice. She learned early that if she cried just enough, or tilted the truth just slightly, people, especially my parents, would take her side without question. I brushed it off when I was younger. I thought every family had a kid like that. But the older we got, the more I realized it wasn't cute anymore. It wasn't harmless. It was a pattern. Melanie never took responsibility, and someone else always paid the price for her mistakes. Usually that someone was me. I remember being 16 and grounded for 2 weeks because Melanie told our parents I had thrown a party while they were out of town. The truth. She invited a few friends over. One of them got drunk and knocked over a lamp. When I confronted her later, she just smiled, sweet, quiet, utterly unbothered. "You're the oldest, Veronica," she'd said like it was some unwritten law of the universe. "You're supposed to take the blame." That should have been my warning, but I kept believing she'd grow out of it, that one day she'd protect me the way I protected her. Spoiler alert, she didn't. By the time I went off to university, Melanie had perfected her role as the family's star. She stayed close to home, went to community college nearby, made a dramatic show of coming home for dinner twice a week. My parents adored her for it. Meanwhile, I moved 2 hours away and worked part-time jobs to stay afloat, because my parents said they could only support one child at a time, and Melanie still needed help figuring things out. I didn't resent her then, not truly. I was proud of my independence. I didn't want to be a burden. I figured I'd make my own life, and that was enough. But slowly the emotional distance grew. Coming home for the holidays felt like walking into someone else's house. My old bedroom had turned into a storage unit. Dinner conversations revolved around Melanie's classes, Melanie's internship drama, Melanie's new boyfriend. I'd try to share something about my campus job or an interesting lecture, and I'd get polite nods, maybe a distracted, "Oh, that's nice, honey," from my mom before the spotlight swung right back to Melanie. I told myself not to take it personally. Maybe this was just adulthood. Maybe I had fallen out of rhythm with the family. Then came the winter. Everything fell apart. I was 23, freshly graduated, and working full-time at a small tech startup. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. My cramped apartment had a leaky faucet and a heater with a personality disorder, but I loved it. I was finally genuinely an adult. That Christmas, I decided to go home for the first time in a couple of years. I brought small gifts, nothing expensive, just thoughtful things I'd picked out. I didn't expect a parade, but I didn't expect the cold shock either. My parents acted surprised to see me. Melanie glowed in a new designer sweater, her boyfriend draped around her like an accessory. Dinner was stiff, uneasy. Melanie kept looking at me, then at our parents, then back at me again like she was waiting for something. A fuse was lit. I just didn't know I was standing on top of the dynamite. The next morning, my mom knocked on my door. She didn't barge in. That was the first red flag. I opened it to find her standing stiffly, arms crossed. "We need to talk," she said. I sat in the living room while my parents stared at me like they didn't recognize me. My dad looked furious. My mom looked hurt. And then Melanie stepped in. Red eyes, trembling lip, Oscar-level performance. She took a breath and told them I had sent her inappropriate messages 6 months earlier, that I had crossed boundaries, made her feel unsafe, that she didn't want to say anything because she loved me, but she couldn't keep it inside anymore. I actually laughed at first. I thought it was some horrifying joke. But no one laughed with me. My mom's face collapsed. My dad stood up and left the room. Melanie stared at me with a blank mask, no tears, no guilt, no emotion. I denied everything. I begged for the messages. She said she deleted them because they made her uncomfortable. They didn't listen. Within an hour, my parents told me they didn't feel comfortable letting me stay in the house. My dad said I was lucky he wasn't calling the cops. Melanie sat there silently, mission accomplished. I packed a bag. Nobody hugged me. Nobody asked if I had somewhere to go. Nobody even said goodbye. It was like I stopped existing. That morning, everything I believed about family died. And I had no idea that Melanie wasn't just lying. She was hiding something. Something that would eventually destroy her life, but not before she destroyed mine first. When I left my parents' house that morning, the winter air felt sharper than it ever had. Not cold sharp. Like every gust of wind was a reminder that I no longer had a home to return to. I remember sitting on the curb with my duffel bag beside me, staring at the gravel near my shoes, because I couldn't look up at the street I had grown up on. I remember thinking, this is what exile feels like. The first few months after the accusation were the closest thing to rock bottom I've ever experienced. There's a certain silence that comes after your own blood cuts you off. It isn't peaceful. It isn't restful. It's the kind that rattles in your bones, the kind that hums inside your skull when you're trying to fall asleep. It's the silence of questions you can't ask and answers you'll never get. My calls to my parents went unanswered. My emails bounced blocked. When I tried reaching out to an aunt I was close to, she replied, with a single sentence, "Your mother says it's best we don't get involved." I even sent Melanie one message. One. Why? Her reply came seconds later. "You always made things about you. Now you're finally facing consequences." I stared at that text for hours. My hands actually went numb. It wasn't just cruelty, it was conviction. She believed she had won. She believed she could rewrite the truth and the world would simply accept her version. And for a while, she was right. That winter was brutal. Not just the weather, the loneliness. I ate instant ramen on Christmas Eve in my freezing apartment wrapped in 2 sweaters because the heater had decided to give up on me. I sat there staring at a blinking cursor on an email draft addressed to my mother. I never sent it. Every day felt like a long walk through fog, a fog that thickened whenever memories of my family slipped in. The sound of my dad humming off key while fixing something, the smell of my mom's garlic rice, Melanie sitting beside me on the couch when we were kids, falling asleep during movies she begged to watch. Lies are cruel, like that they don't just cut the present, they poison the past. So I did the only thing I could. I threw myself into work. Not because I was ambitious. Because I needed something, anything to keep my brain from spiraling into the abyss they pushed me into. I stayed late. I volunteered for weekend projects. I took on responsibilities no one wanted. At first it was just survival. Avoid the silence. Outrun the memories. But somewhere in that grind, something strange happened. I got good at what I was doing. Really good. Patterns that used to confuse me suddenly made sense. I saw bottlenecks, inefficiencies, ways to improve systems. I kept notes built. My own templates taught myself basic automation. It wasn't intentional. It was instinct. The same instinct that had kept me afloat since childhood. Fix the problem, so no one gets mad. One afternoon, the CTO, a woman named Cassandra, stopped me in the hallway. She was intimidating in the most elegant way. Calm voice, sharp eyes, always wearing navy blazers, and never smiling. Unless she meant it. "Veronica," she said, "have you ever thought about leading a team?" I actually laughed. "Me, I'm not a leader." She shook her head. "You already are. You just don't know it yet." It was the first time in years that someone believed in me. No suspicion, no accusations, just trust. Pure, simple trust. I didn't cry, though I wanted to. Instead, I said yes. That was the first turning point. From there, everything slowly shifted. I was promoted to team lead within the year. I took a small raise, but it wasn't about money. It was about finally feeling seen. Around that time, I started documenting everything. Every text, every email, every screenshot, not just from work, everything in my life. Trauma teaches you to fear being misunderstood. Betrayal teaches you to archive proof. Then came the second turning point. 2 years after being cut off with savings built from obsessive budgeting and freelance jobs, I co-founded a small tech consulting firm with 3 other women I met at networking events. None of us came from money. None of us had investors. We met in dingy cafes and co-working spaces that smelled like spilled espresso and ambition. Our idea was simple help old-school businesses modernize. Our first client was a manufacturing company still doing accounting and physical binders. Binders. We dragged them into the 21st century and saved them hundreds of thousands of dollars. Word spread like wildfire. By year 3, we had 12 employees and a waiting list. Meanwhile, Melanie was posting brunch photos and detox tea sponsorships. The contrast wasn't lost on me. With stability came something I hadn't felt in years: room to breathe. I found a quiet condo near a park. 2 bedrooms, small kitchen, peeling paint, but it was mine. I painted the walls by hand, hung shelves. I built myself, bought a bookshelf I absolutely didn't need but loved anyway. And then I adopted Oso. Oso was a senior golden retriever with cloudy eyes and a big, lumbering body that made him look like he was dragging a yellow rug behind him. He snored like thunder but followed me from room to room. He was patient, gentle, warm. He was the first creature in years who didn't expect anything from me except love. Eventually, when the ground beneath me felt steady again, I opened my heart to dating. Carefully, cautiously. Trauma makes your heart a locked door with too many deadbolts. But then I met Daniel Reyes in the history aisle of a bookstore, both of us reaching for the same biography. He teased me for having pretentious taste, and I told him he had the reading preferences of a middle schooler. He laughed a real laugh, not embarrassed, not offended, just amused. It was the easiest conversation I'd had in years. Daniel was steady where I was. Brittle calm where I was anxious and honest, where my life had once been full of lies. When I finally told him what happened with my family, I braced myself for suspicion, doubt, distance. But he didn't lean away. "You didn't deserve that," he said, "and I'm sorry no one fought for you." Simple words, but they cracked something open inside me. For the first time since my family threw me out, I felt the weight of it lift just a fraction. Enough to breathe, enough to hope, enough to believe that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't broken beyond repair. For a while, I thought that was my ending. A quiet life rebuilt from ashes, a partner who chose me, a dog who loved me, a business thriving. But healing isn't forgetting, and forgetting isn't healing. Because one afternoon, years after the lie that ruined everything, an email appeared in my inbox. 5 words that made my chest tighten. "Are you coming to Grandma's? Melanie, after all this time." And suddenly the past wasn't distant anymore. It was knocking on my door. And this time, I wasn't going to hide. When Melanie's email hit my inbox, I didn't react at first. I just stared at the screen, my hand frozen over the mouse. 5 years of silence, and then, "Are you coming to Grandma's?" No apology, no explanation, not even a greeting. Just a casual question, like we were still sisters swapping holiday plans. I reread the message 10 times, waiting for another sentence to appear. Something that made sense. Something that acknowledged the crater she left in my life. But nothing came. My stomach tightened, not with fear, those days were long gone, but with something colder. Suspicion. Calculation. The instinct you develop after being stabbed once by the hand you trusted most. I typed a reply with trembling fingers. "Did you mean to send this to me?" It took her 6 minutes to respond. "Yes, she's sick. Everyone will be there." Everyone. Funny word, that one. Everyone except the sister they exiled. Everyone except the woman they called a monster behind closed doors. Everyone except the daughter they threw away without a second question. I closed my laptop. I didn't respond. I didn't want to give her even a syllable more. But the email cracked something open, something I had welded shut with years of hard work and healing. It wasn't hope. God, no. It was curiosity. The dangerous kind. The kind that whispers what happened to them. the kind that tempts you to look back at the fire that once burned you alive. And I looked. I didn't respond to Melanie, but I did something I had resisted for years. I opened her social media pages. Every profile I found was public. She always liked attention. The first thing I noticed was how drastically different she looked. Still polished, still trying, but tired. Really tired. The glow she used to have was gone. Her smile looked practiced, forced. Even her poses looked stiff, like she was trying too hard to appear untouched. Then I scrolled further. Her job at the marketing firm gone. Her influencer brand barely breathing. Her sponsored posts reduced to detox teas and budget skincare. The photos told a story. The captions told the truth. Over the past year, she had bounced between jobs, complained about toxic workplaces, hinted at unfair treatment, and repeatedly posted about starting over. One picture showed her in front of a U-Haul, smiling weakly. "Starting over is scary but necessary," the caption said. The facade was cracking, and unlike last time, I wasn't the one underneath the rubble. Next, I checked my parents' profiles. I wasn't prepared for what I found. My father's contracting business, his pride, his baby. The thing he used to brag about at every barbecue was gone. Sold off. My mother had posted vague updates about unexpected financial changes, tough transitions, and new beginnings. Their house sold. They had downsized into a rental, one they apparently couldn't afford for much longer if Melanie was reaching out. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt nothing. Just a quiet, wary stillness. Because when someone who destroyed you starts falling apart, you don't smile. You watch. You wait. You prepare for impact. And the impact came at 9:41 p.m. on a Thursday. My phone lit up with the call from an unknown number. I don't answer those ever, but something in my gut twisted. A pull, a warning. I answered. "Hello." Silence. Breathing. Then a trembling voice I hadn't heard in half a decade. "Veronica." My mother. For a moment I forgot how to breathe. She sounded older, smaller, like life had sanded her down to a thin, brittle version of the woman who once barked orders while stirring a pot of stew. She asked how I was. She said she missed me, and then without even taking a breath, she told me Grandma had passed away. They were cleaning out her house. My chest tightened. My grandma had been one of the few people in my family who never made me feel like an inconvenience. She had sent me birthday cards every year, even after I stopped receiving them from everyone else, and she died without me ever getting to say goodbye. I swallowed my grief, because my mother wasn't calling to give me condolences. She had a reason, and then she said it. "We're being evicted." Just like that, no prelude, no softening, just the truth she wanted me to fix. Apparently, the landlord had found a new buyer. The lease was expiring. They had nowhere to go. "We're trying to stay together," she said, voice cracking. "But it's hard. Melanie is doing her best, but it's a lot." I didn't say a word. I just listened. Then she hit her real point. "You've always been good with money. Maybe you could help." I closed my eyes. That was it. Not "we want you back." Not "we're sorry." Not "we were wrong." Just maybe you could help. Like I was some emergency fund they'd forgotten to tap into. I told her I needed time to think. She thanked me too quickly. When the call ended, I sat in the dark for a long time. Not angry, not hurt, just aware. They didn't want me. They wanted a solution. Over the next few days, I put the pieces together. Quietly, efficiently, like I was solving a puzzle instead of digging through my own family's wreckage. An old colleague who used to work with Melanie told me she'd been let go for improper use of resources. There were rumors of fabricated reports, inflated numbers, nothing provable but enough to make her toxic in the industry. Another friend mentioned that Melanie's ex-boyfriend, the one she had adored, left after a massive fight. She accused him of sabotaging her career. He accused her of lying about him to mutual friends. Patterns. Patterns I knew too well. But nothing could have prepared me for the message she sent next. It wasn't 5 words this time. It was paragraphs, an entire confession disguised as a plea. She wrote about her stress, her pressures, her mistakes. She tiptoed around the truth, like it was a puddle she didn't want to get dirty in. She never said I lied. She said things like perception, miscommunication, panic, misunderstood intentions. And then the final line, "Mom and Dad need you. I need you. Please don't let what happened years ago keep us apart. We're family." When I read that sentence, something inside me went quiet. Not healed, not forgiven, just quiet. Because the Veronica who begged for answers 5 years ago was gone. The Veronica who thought family was a shield was gone. I was no longer a girl chasing their approval. I was a woman who built her own life from the ground they tried to bury her in. And for the first time, I realized something. Maybe I didn't owe them anything. Not explanations, not forgiveness, not rescue. But I owed myself one thing: closure. And closure doesn't come from running. It comes from facing the fire that burned you. So I made a decision. Not to reconnect, not to help. I was going to see them. With my own eyes. Face to face. Because what Melanie didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had something now. Proof. Real time-stamped, irrefutable proof. A forgotten screen recording from years ago. Footage showing every message I sent during the week she accused me. And not one was to her. I had a truth powerful enough to collapse the lies she built her whole life on. And I was finally ready to put it on the table. The morning I decided to face them, the city was unnervingly quiet. The kind of quiet that sits in your lungs, heavy and unmoving. I drove back to the neighborhood I once swore I'd never set foot in again. It felt smaller than I remembered. The trees thinner, the houses worn down by too many winters and too little care. My parents' rental was easy to spot. The porch light was broken, hanging at an angle like it had given up. Bags of trash sat beside the bin, overflowing. A piece of caution tape fluttered near a fence post, probably from some construction that never got finished. I parked a block away and sat there with my fingers wrapped around the steering wheel, staring at that house. The same house they were so desperate to keep. The same house they expected me to save them from losing. For a moment, old memories threatened to choke me. Birthdays, Christmas mornings, arguments, laughter. All tangled together like vines waiting to pull me under. But then I remembered the cold in my father's voice when he told me I was lucky he wasn't calling the cops. I remembered my mother standing stiffly at the doorway telling me I couldn't stay. I remembered Melanie's blank face, her eyes dry, her voice steady as she lied. Those memories didn't choke me. They anchored me. I got out of the car. The gravel crunched beneath my boots as I approached the house. Before I could knock, the door opened, like they had been waiting behind it. My mother stood there, smaller than I remembered. Her shoulders curled inward like she was trying to fold herself into her own spine. Her eyes, once sharp enough to catch every mistake I made, were dim, swollen, exhausted. Veronica, she breathed, as if saying my name hurt her throat. My father appeared behind her, limping slightly. His hair was grayer, his posture stiffer, but his expression unchanged. That same stern disapproval he always carried when looking at me. The disappointment he wore like a badge of honor. And then Melanie stepped into view. Her makeup was perfect, but her expression was crumbling at the edges. Her lips were pressed together so tightly they trembled. She looked like an actress who'd rehearsed her lines but forgotten the script right before curtain call. I didn't say hello. I didn't hug them. I just asked, "You wanted to talk?" They stepped aside. I walked in. It felt strange sitting at the same kitchen table I used to do homework at, listening to my parents sip coffee like I was some visitor. The chairs creaked the same. The air smelled the same. But everything inside it was different. The conversation started polite, painfully polite. They asked about my work, my condo, my health. Melanie asked nothing, her gaze locked on the table. Then finally my mother exhaled shakily and said the words I knew were coming. "We need help." My father cleared his throat. The landlord filed the eviction papers. New buyer wants to renovate the place. Melanie twisted a ring around her finger. I lost my job. Again. Her voice cracked, but I didn't know if it was real or part of the performance. My parents explained that savings were gone, opportunities were gone, their support system was gone. They were drowning, and they believed I was the life raft. My mother leaned forward, voice soft, almost pleading. "Veronica, this doesn't have to be complicated. We're family. We can put everything behind us." There it was. That phrase, "we're family." They used it like a magic spell, a phrase meant to erase everything, a reset button only they were allowed to push. I leaned back, letting the silence stretch, letting them feel the weight of it. Melanie shifted in her seat. My father swallowed hard. Then I tilted my head slightly and asked, "Does that include what Melanie said about me?" The room froze. My mother's eyes darted to Melanie. My father's jaw clenched. Melanie's fingers stilled. No one answered. "No one's proud of how that played out," my mother said eventually, trying to salvage the moment. "It was a confusing time." I laughed. Not loudly, not mockingly, just quietly, like the irony was too much for me to swallow. "Confusing," I repeated. "You accused me of something criminal. You threw me out without asking for my side. You made me homeless, and suddenly it was just confusing." My father finally spoke, his voice rough. "We were protecting our daughter. I looked him dead in the eyes. I am your daughter. Silence again. No one had an answer for that. Melanie finally spoke, her voice trembling. I didn't think they'd take it that far. She stared at her hands. I thought it would scare you, make you come home more. I didn't think... I cut her off. You didn't think they'd take it that far? Or you didn't think I'd walk away and never come back? Her silence was the truth. I let it linger. Let them all sit in it. Let them taste what I had been forced to swallow for 5 years. Then I stood slowly, the chair scraping against the floor. I've spent 5 years imagining this moment, I said, wondering what I'd say if you ever came back. I thought I'd scream, or cry, or break something. But now, I smiled softly, almost gently. Now I think I'd rather show you what I built without you. I turned toward the door. Veronica, wait, my mother said, her voice rising with panic. We don't have time, the eviction. You should have thought of that before you made your daughter homeless, I replied. I hope Melanie's influencer deals can cover first and last month's rent. And then I walked out. But I wasn't done. Not even close. The thing about revenge is that it only works if you've already done the work on yourself. Otherwise, it's just insecurity in a costume. I didn't want to destroy them for the sake of it. I wanted them to see exactly what they lost, what they threw away. I wanted them to feel accountability. So I started planning. The first call I made was to my lawyer, Reina Delgado. Mid-30s, sharp as a scalpel, deadpan sense of humor, and a courtroom presence that could freeze blood. I didn't even need to explain much. My sister made a defamatory claim years ago that nearly ruined my life, I said. And now she's reaching out again. Reina didn't blink. Send me everything. I forwarded the emails, the screenshots, and most importantly, the screen recording. She reviewed it all in under an hour. Is this about a lawsuit? She asked. Eventually, I said. But first, I want to make a point. Reina smirked. Then let's shake them up. Together, we drafted a cease and desist letter that was a masterpiece of polite legal brutality. It laid out Melanie's lie in clean, undeniable language. It referenced the timeline, the lack of evidence, the harm done to my life. But I didn't send it. Not yet. It was my loaded weapon safety off, tucked neatly in my metaphorical pocket. Next, I reached out to old acquaintances, mutual friends who had ghosted me after the accusation. I asked them a simple question. Did you ever hear Melanie's version of what happened? Every single one said yes. Every single one had believed her. So I gave them the truth. Calmly, factually, no pity party. I showed them the screen recording, forwarded the emails, explained what 5 years of exile had done to me. And one by one, I watched realization dawn in their eyes. People unfollowed Melanie. Some blocked her. Others reached out demanding explanations. Her social foundation cracked, and I hadn't even touched her yet. But my parents, they weren't off the hook. Because what they didn't know was that I had recently made a purchase. A very specific purchase. I had bought their outstanding rental debt from the landlord. Which meant they didn't owe the landlord anymore. They owed me. The next morning, I sent my mother a message. There's a unit available near my condo. Rent is $1,600. First and last up front. Thought you might want to check it out before someone else takes it. It took 10 minutes for her to call. Veronica, is this your place? I own the property, I said flatly. Are you offering to let us stay there? I'm offering to rent it to you. Standard lease, no special treatment. Her gasp was a small broken thing. You'd charge your own parents rent. You charged your own daughter nothing but pain for 5 years, I replied. Seems fair. I hung up. It wasn't cruelty. It was accountability. And then as the final piece of the setup, I invited them all, my parents, Melanie, and a few extended relatives to a reconciliation dinner. A nice Italian restaurant, warm lighting, small tables, just intimate enough to fracture someone's world. They all RSVP'd, yes. They had no idea what they were walking into. The night of the reconciliation dinner felt like walking into a stage play I had written myself. Every line rehearsed, every beat, intentional. Every truth lined up like dominoes waiting for the first push. The restaurant was one of those small, dimly lit Italian places tucked between a florist shop and a quiet boutique. Old brick walls, warm amber lighting. Violin music drifting softly from hidden speakers. It was cozy enough to feel intimate, but refined enough to make a scene impossible to ignore. Perfect. I arrived 10 minutes early. Not because I was nervous those days were long gone, but because I wanted to control the atmosphere. The server led me to a corner table by the window, a spot where I could see the whole room and every expression on their faces. Reina arrived 2 minutes later. She wore a deep navy blazer and a slick bun, her expression unreadable. She wasn't acting as my attorney tonight, just a friend from work, but the slim black briefcase she carried under her arm was a silent warning in itself. You ready? She asked, sliding into the seat beside me. I've been ready for 5 years, I said. She nodded. Then let's close the chapter. My parents arrived first. My mother's eyes were red-rimmed, her makeup applied too carefully. My father looked stiff, his limp worse than before, his jaw clenched hard enough to crack teeth. They scanned the room until they spotted me. Relief, fear, hope, guilt. I saw it all flicker across their faces like a slideshow. They approached slowly as if coming too fast would scare me away. Veronica, my mother whispered, her tone trembling between longing and shame. I didn't stand up, I didn't smile, I just gestured calmly toward the empty seats. They sat. Melanie came last. She was dressed like she wanted to look expensive. White blazer, gold earrings, hair curled to perfection, but nothing could hide the exhaustion beneath her eyes. She paused at the edge of the table, hesitating like a child waiting to be scolded. I didn't move. She sat down silently. For a moment, the only sound was the soft clink of silverware from nearby tables. The restaurant buzzed with quiet conversations, glasses, clinking forks, scraping plates. Normal life happening around us. But at our table, time felt frozen. We're glad you came, my father said stiffly. My mother nodded. We really want to move past everything. Melanie stared at her hands, twisting her ring the same way she had at the rental house. A nervous tic she must have developed from years of lying. I let them ramble. Small talk. Forced niceties. Awkward questions about my job, my condo, my business. I answered none of them. I waited. And when the moment was right, I reached into my handbag and pulled out a small black folder. Set it gently on the table, not opening it, not pushing it toward them, just letting it sit there like a bomb waiting for a match. The shift was immediate. My mother's breath hitched. My father's shoulders stiffened. Melanie blanched. What is that? My mother whispered. This, I said, tapping the folder once, is a full timeline of the events surrounding the accusation Melanie made 5 years ago, including a screen recording of my phone during the exact week she claimed I sent inappropriate messages. Melanie's lipstick could not conceal how bloodless her lips became. My father leaned forward. Let us see it. No. I slid the folder back toward myself. You don't get access to this until you're ready to do things the right way. My mother blinked, confused. What does that mean? It means, I said calmly, that if we're talking about putting things behind us, we're going to start with the truth. Written, signed, sent to every single person who heard Melanie's lie. Melanie's voice cracked instantly. You can't ask me to do that. Oh, I can, I said, locking eyes with her. And I am. The restaurant around us continued peacefully oblivious, but at our table, tension rippled off the surface like heat from a fire. My father tried to intervene. Veronica, you're being unreasonable. No. I looked directly at him. What was unreasonable was believing a lie without asking for my side. What was unreasonable was throwing your eldest daughter out in the cold with nowhere to go. What was unreasonable was letting 5 years pass without a single attempt to ask the truth. Neither parent had anything to say. Melanie's throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. I was stressed, she whispered. I was going through a lot. Stress doesn't fabricate accusations, I said sharply. Stress doesn't create messages that never existed. Stress doesn't make you destroy someone's life. Tears filled her eyes, but I didn't flinch. You want forgiveness, I continued. You want a fresh start. Then you are going to write an apology, a real one. You are going to admit you lied. And you are going to send it to everyone who judged me. Everyone who turned away from me. Everyone who chose your lie over my truth. Melanie covered her mouth with her hand, breath shaking, shoulders trembling. My parents stared at me stunned, as if seeing me for the first time. You ruined my life, I said softly. The least you can do is tell the truth. My mother reached for my arm. What about us? What do you want from us? I looked down at her hand, but didn't pull away. I want accountability, from all of you. I turned to my father. You will write a letter of your own, acknowledging that you believed a lie without evidence, acknowledging the consequences of your decision, and apologizing for the damage it caused. His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. And if we don't, Melanie whispered. I nodded toward Raina. That's my friend, I said. She also happens to be my attorney. If you refuse to take responsibility, she will file a defamation lawsuit on Monday morning. And once it's in the system, it will be public record. Melanie's breath caught. You wouldn't. Melanie Raina said, her tone clinical. We have enough evidence to bury you. My mother broke. She covered her mouth, sobbing quietly. My father stared at the table, humiliation burning into his skin. Melanie's shoulders shook. I stood slowly folding my napkin. I don't want revenge, I said. Not the messy kind. But I do want accountability. And I want you to know I am not the same daughter you threw away. I stepped back, letting my gaze sweep across all three of them. I'm stronger now, and I never needed you. With that, I walked out. I didn't look back, but I didn't have to. I knew that was the moment everything shifted, the moment they understood the tables had turned, the moment the reckoning began. 3 days passed. No calls, no texts, no frantic messages, just heavy, suffocating silence. The calm before the storm. On the fourth day, my phone rang. Raina. Veronica, she said, voice clipped but satisfied. They responded. I exhaled, slow and steady. And they're folding, she said. Completely. Melanie has drafted the written apology. She acknowledges everything. It hits every point we outlined. And my parents, they're complying too. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I just said good. Because closure wasn't about winning. It was about balance. It was about truth. It was about finally taking back the voice they stole from me. And I wasn't finished yet. Not even close. The fallout didn't happen all at once. It unraveled slowly, quietly, like a thread pulled from the hem of a garment that had been holding itself together with hope and denial. 3 days after Raina told me they'd folded, the flood began. First came Melanie's letter. 3 pages. Half apology, half confession, no room for misinterpretation. She admitted the truth. In black ink she lied. She fabricated the accusation. She let it destroy my life. She blamed stress, insecurity, jealousy, self-sabotage, excuses that didn't matter, not when lined up beside the single truth she had avoided for 5 years. The letter wasn't for me. It was for the 10 people who had ghosted me, blocked me, whispered about me. The 10 people who believed her so easily. The 10 people whose silence compounded the damage she'd done. Each one received a copy. Each one reached out to me afterward. Some apologized, some rambled, some admitted they always felt something wasn't right about her story. I read every message, responded to none. Closure didn't require conversation. Then came my parents' letter. Short, formal. The kind of apology made by people who aren't sure how to express regret without crumbling under it. They admitted they should have asked for evidence. They admitted they abandoned me. They admitted their actions had long-term consequences. It wasn't emotional or warm, but it was honest. And honesty was all I ever wanted from them. But the real shift came in what happened next, because consequences have a way of multiplying. Melanie disappeared from social media within a week. One day her influencer posts were still struggling for likes. The next day gone. Every profile deleted, every trace erased. I didn't celebrate. The truth is, I felt nothing. Just a quiet, distant recognition that something inevitable had finally happened. Actions have gravity. Lies have expiration dates. Melanie's life had been built on both, and now everything was collapsing. A friend of mine later mentioned she'd taken a part-time customer service job, night shifts, low pay, no glamour, a job that didn't require public trust. My parents weren't faring much better. The eviction had gone through. The rental debt now tied to me had been cleared, but the 30-day notice remained. They moved out 27 days after the dinner. I didn't see it happen. I didn't drive by. I didn't check in. I just received a text, "We're out. Thank you for giving us time." I didn't reply. It wasn't cruelty, it was distance. The space I had earned, the space they had created. I made sure multiple housing assistance agencies reached out to them afterward. I wasn't trying to destroy their lives, just reassign the responsibility they once pushed onto me without hesitation. They found a small apartment in a cheaper neighborhood. I didn't know which one. I didn't need to. My life didn't orbit them anymore. Months passed. Seasons changed. Leaves turned gold outside my condo's windows. My business continued to grow exponentially. We expanded to new industries, hired more staff, partnered with companies I once dreamed of working for. Investment opportunities opened like doors I didn't even realize existed. I bought shares in 2 promising startups. I started mentoring young women who reminded me of myself, girls, trying to climb the ladder with weights tied to their ankles. And somehow, without noticing, my life became mine. Daniel and I moved into a modest sunlit house with hardwood floors that creaked and a backyard big enough for Oso to waddle around. We chose the house together, something neutral, something ours. No memories of my past, no shadows hanging in corners. Oso had his own bed in the living room, a giant gray cushion he barely fit onto. Daniel installed baby gates, not for safety, but to keep Oso from wandering into the kitchen every time he heard a cheese wrapper. Some nights we cooked together, me chopping vegetables, him teasing me for my dramatic knife movements. Some mornings I woke up to coffee he'd set beside the bed, even when he left early. It was simple, quiet, safe. Everything my childhood home had never been. And yet, every now and then, when the sun set just right or a certain song played, a heaviness would creep into my chest, a reminder of wounds that healed but left scars. One afternoon, late spring, warm breeze drifting through the open porch door, I sat outside with a mug of coffee, watching Oso nap in a patch of sunlight. Daniel was inside on a work call, pacing quietly. The world felt still, soft, safe. But inside my chest, something was unsettled. I didn't hear Daniel walk out until he sat beside me. "You're thinking," he said gently. I let out a slow breath. "Always." He nudged me with his shoulder. "Tell me." I stared at the street, our quiet little street, lined with neat lawns and patient trees, and tried to put into words what had been sitting inside me since the dinner, since the letters, since the silence. "It's strange," I said finally. "I thought when everything was over, when they admitted they were wrong, when they apologized, when they faced consequences, I thought I would feel lighter. And you don't." I paused. Complete. Not healed, not angry, just complete. Daniel didn't reply immediately. He just listened the way he always did. The kind of listening that didn't rush you or judge you. The kind that made you feel your words mattered. "Forgiveness isn't an obligation," he said after a moment. "It's a choice. And closure's something different." I nodded. Forgiveness is letting go of the pain. Closure is taking back the power. "And which one did you want?" he asked quietly. I looked at Oso, at the house behind us, at the life I built from the ashes of what they did to me. "I wanted closure," I whispered, and I took it. Daniel smiled, soft, proud, warm. The kind of smile that says you survived, and I see you. I leaned my head on his shoulder, letting the quiet settle between us. My family no longer defined me. Their choices no longer shaped my future. Their lies no longer stole my voice. For the first time in my life, I wasn't Veronica Moore, the scapegoat, or Veronica Moore, the outcast, or Veronica Moore, the daughter begging to be believed. I was just Veronica, and that was enough, more than enough. I closed my eyes, feeling the sun against my face, and Daniel's arm slipped gently around my waist. Forgiveness, maybe, one day. But closure was mine, and I had earned every inch of it.